Keir Starmer's set to make his big speech at the annual Labour Party conference this afternoon. We've already heard from his left and right-hand women, Deputy Leader Angela Rayner and Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves. And today at 2 p.m, Sir Keir will promise the country a decade of national renewal. I'm joined now, rejoined by TalkTV's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. A decade of Starmer, that sounds bad. What on earth does he mean by a decade of national renewal? This is what I worry about. He's also going to, in this massive keynote speech, the last time he gave one, by the way, I think it went on for about 90 minutes. So golly. Please, not that long, Keir, for God's sake, spare us. But he's going to promise new powers for all of England's towns and cities. So he's saying a decade of national renewal. I would say that adds up to a decade of disastrous devolution. We've got too much devolution already.
Yeah, and it didn't actually work particularly well under the Tories. I mean, they've tried this as well. I wouldn't have said it's been a stunning success.
Disaster, I think.
Basically, because people, as it turns out, are not that eager to run for not very well paid posts, running, you know, police and crime commission, that kind of thing. It just hasn't been a brilliant success. I don't really know why they're doing that. So the whole theme of Sir Keir's speech this afternoon is all about reversing years of Tory decline. I mean, I think we can all get on board with reversing decline. The question is,
that's the Tories' policy as well.
How exactly are you going to do that? Yeah, reversing the decline that they presided over. Brilliant. Well done. Everyone's being really original here, aren't they? I slightly fear that this speech is going to be a classic party conference speech, which, to be fair on Rishi Sunak's, his wasn't. It did actually contain some pretty meaty and pretty controversial proposals. It sounds as if Sir Keir's speech is going to be a lot of kind of flammel, you know. We've got this vision for rebuilding, you know, we're going to make everything better. Well, yes, exactly, but how?
Yeah, I mean, his Rwanda plan is extraordinary. We keep coming back to it, but I need to get your take on it. In an interview with Laura Kunsberg on the BBC at the weekend, he said that, hypothetically, if the government get the Rwanda scheme going and it does act as the deterrent they hope, and it works, and it stops all the boats, Keir Starmer will reverse that decision and axe the Rwanda scheme. I mean, what on earth is he talking about?
That is his idea of reversing decline, is it? Actually going backwards?
Yeah.
Look, they don't. The reason he's saying that is because they don't actually particularly ideologically want to reduce the amount of immigration to this country. You know, all they talk about is, well, we need more safe routes, you know, to which the argument is there's actually, I mean, this is a red herring. There are plenty of safe routes into this country. That's how 1 million extra people came in last year, fully, legally and legitimately from all over the world. So Labour don't have an answer that will satisfy the majority of voters in this country on immigration, because poll after poll, it's not a party political comment by me, poll after poll shows that the majority of the people in this country, whether they vote Labour, whether they vote Tory, whatever their political allegiances, they are very unhappy with the scale of immigration to this country and also the poor security of our borders. Labour don't have any answers to that.
Absolutely. You know, Keir Starmer, as we found out, was it 2-3 weeks ago, you know, when he went to The Hague and started saying to the EU, please, can we do a deal with you on our migrants? We'll take our fair share. He's completely out of step with the British people there. And what the British people don't want to see is him turning, you know, yearningly to Brussels and going, let's make a deal, help us out, help us out.
It's never worked for us thus far, has it?
But it flies in the face of the democratic decision the people of Britain made to leave the EU. Why is he appealing to Brussels?
Because he doesn't get out enough, perhaps doesn't get out beyond central London enough. It's very obvious that there is an overwhelming hostility to yet more. Essentially, what Labour wants is more open borders. A lot of them almost pretty much admit that. So this is a huge weak point for Labour going into the next election. The one thing they've got in their favour is that it's the Tories who've presided over the situation we're in. So neither party is offering a very good solution. Rwanda seems to be the best that they've got. If they can make that work, the Tories, then perhaps they'll be able to at least demonstrate some progress.
Yeah. I'll tell you what's funny, made me laugh was Sunak saying, change, change, I'm the candidate for change,
Right.
change. Conservatives don't like change.
Well, I think it's all he's got, though, hasn't it? It's not going to work as a pitch if he says, well, you know, I just want to continue from the brilliant 13 years that this government has presided over. But what a shame for Labour. Their conference has been totally overshadowed by this awful geopolitical situation, which is an extremely awkward issue
for
Labour at the best of times. So, you know, Keir Starmer's just not lucky, is he? He's not a lucky politician.
Yeah, I mean, and all great politicians actually do need luck. And to have this great dark cloud of shadow over the whole conference.
This is
what's
their big
going on in
moment
Israel.
to
I mean,
set out their stall, and nobody's really listening. Let's be honest.
Put it this way: the Labour Party conference is not making the front pages. Also, this is what worried me was Rachel Reeves, the shadow chancellor, making her speech yesterday, somehow blaming some of our financial problems, our economic problems, on the fact that the rich are avoiding tax,
Right.
and she wants to tax the rich more so the poor can get the money. I mean, old-fashioned Labour stuff, but quite worrying and wrong-headed, I would say. That's not where our financial problems stem from. It's not the rich avoiding tax, is it?
Of course not. I'm afraid the whole gathering absolutely oozes class envy. I listened to the enormous cheer that greeted the announcement about VAT on private school fees, as if this is going to resolve the UK's problems, and how utterly wrong-headed that policy is anyway, because for sure, adding 20% to school fees that are already rocketing is going to push a very great deal of the pupils that are currently in independent schools into the state sector. And guess what? We already don't have enough teachers in the state sector. It's only going to cost the state more. So it's a completely stupid policy, but they all love it. They cheered to the rafters because this is essentially what they see as an attack on privilege.
I tell you who cheered from the rafters at Rachel Reeves' speech was the former Governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, who might as well... Why doesn't he just come up and say, I vote Labour? I mean, the guy is...
Because he doesn't need to, because I think we kind of roughly know where he is.
I think he votes communist, actually. But it's strange the way this guy has always sided with the left, always sided with Europe and against the Tories. I mean, this was a guy who was the Governor of the Bank of England. Quite inappropriate behaviour.
Ultimate establishment figure, really, isn't he? And this is straight out of the kind of Blair playbook, isn't it, from the late 90s? You know, you've got to get these so-called credible figures, these heavy hitters, basically establishment figures, to say, look, don't be scared of Labour. You know, Rachel Reeves is a brilliant economist. I don't feel any better for having listened to that. I'm sure you don't either.
No, that was not the most exhilarating of speeches. But then again, Rachel isn't famous for that. How much do you think we should worry about Keir Starmer and Labour? Suppose, horror of horrors, they win the next election, and let's face it, they're on course to do that. Will the mask slip then? Because he is projecting a sort of Blairite centrist Labour Party. You know, you can trust us, we're sensible, we're moderate. But he's never been moderate politically in his entire life. When he gets into number 10 Downing Street, will we see the real Keir, and should we fear that?
I mean, yes. I mean, this was, after all, this is somebody who was happy to serve in Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet. This is somebody who isn't actually at all Blairite. You know, you look at the policies that they are pushing, and they're not really they don't bear any resemblance to the aspirational messages that were coming out of New Labour. That pivot that Blair and Brown so successfully did to move away from the left to actually get to the centre ground, even sometimes tilting a little bit to the right of centre. We see none of that here. Only a few little gestures to try to court the city a little bit. I mean, the city is not reassured by any of this. They just feel that it may be inevitable, so they've got at least to listen. But I'm very worried about it. I think anybody who wants to see growth, who wants to see the promise of Brexit in any way fulfilled, should be extremely concerned about what is coming down the track from a party leadership that has never supported Brexit and is making very little secret of its hopes of essentially reforging a relationship with the EU, which will effectively take us back in all but name.
Exactly. I mean, it's clear that's what he wants to do. You know, he actually said, didn't he, that he wants to have a close relationship with the EU and to basically stick to everything that they want, which is not what we voted for. But to what extent, Isabel, do you think that Keir's march towards Downing Street is fuelled by, you know, a new groundswell of support for Labour, or more to the point, I would suggest it is just disaffection and fatigue with 13 years of Tory government. People do want to change, and the easiest way to get change is vote for a different party. Do you think it's
Well,
that?
it's a huge reflection, and I wouldn't say it's a march towards Downing Street anyway. I think it's a sort of a bit of a slow walk with some potential pitfalls along the way, quite big potential pitfalls. Look, there's no groundswell of enthusiasm, I don't sense, and neither do the polls suggest, for either the Labour Party broadly and its offer at the moment, or Keir Starmer as a leader. You know, nobody is excited by Keir Starmer.
Right.
But the problem we've got is, in a two-party system, many people up and down the country feel that if they want change and they don't want to reward the Tories for, frankly, the dreadful state this country is in, then their vote is wasted unless they vote for Labour. I think the Lib Dems are going to do a lot better than anybody is really giving credit for right now, not least because where on earth is their leader? Ed Davey, anyone? Has anyone
Last time I saw him, he was falling out of a canoe into the river.
I have no idea where he is or what he thinks or what he's saying, because he's invisible. But his ground forces are doing a great job in quite a lot of constituencies.
It'd be interesting if at the next election, as looks possible, you know, the SNP implode and Labour get quite a lot of seats up in Scotland. So the Lib Dems could become the third party. Yeah. So once again, they get that pulpit where the Lib Dem leader gets to speak every time there's Prime Minister's question time, because losing that has turned them into the invisible force, hasn't it?
Well, I think Ed Davey has turned himself into an invisible force. I mean, there's absolutely space right now for a third party, a vocal and exciting party leader would get a lot of airtime. It's just that he's not exciting, he's not vocal, and he's not really doing anything.
Absolutely, so boring. Let's read a couple of comments. This is Jenny on Labour. She says, your guest shows, this was a guy called Mike Gapes, a former Labour MP I had on earlier. He said he showed that Labour know nothing on illegal migration. Gangs will be replaced quicker than a flash. It happened already. Gangs have been imprisoned, yet they are replaced. Yeah, this constant obsession with, oh, the evil people smugglers. I always say, well, what about the migrants? They don't get into those boats involuntarily. They pay money to come across.
So, Kevin, I couldn't agree with you more on this. And you know why people keep repeating this phrase, why politicians keep repeating this phrase? These dreadful, terrible, evil people smugglers. That's the easiest thing they can say.
It is.
Because we can all agree that those are bad guys, right?
Of course they are.
But let's be much more... I think actually voters want to hear more honesty. Those people smugglers are responding to a market. They don't create the market. Their boats are filled with very willing people who are paying good money to come to a new life. And frankly, I can't blame them. We offer them a great alternative to wherever it is they've come from. Generally not actually from war and terror, certainly not from the shores of France. They're not escaping anything there. But yes, we can all agree the people smugglers are bad people, but I think we also have to look at the very questionable motives of many of the people that are filling those boats.
Here's another comment, pretty basic. It's from Kevin. Nice name. Kevin on Labour. If you don't vote for the Tories, then you will get a Labour government, and then we'll be in a real mess. I mean, do you think, you know, that there's always this depiction of what happens on ballot day? It can be very different to what everybody has been predicting. So come that moment, Neil Kinnock experienced it back in the 90s. It was his big moment. He was going to be the next Prime Minister, and everybody went into the ballot box, and at the last moment they go, I cannot bring myself to vote for Labour. I'm going for the Tories, and guess what? He lost. Yeah. Do you think that could happen, that people will be worried?
I actually do think that could happen, and I think there could be quite a lot of tactical stuff going on much nearer the time, where certain parties although they remain on the ballot paper, they have quiet agreements with other parties that they will do less campaigning in a particular constituency. Let's see who can combine to defeat the incumbent. That might actually work in Labour's favour in some seats where perhaps the Lib Dems quietly say, actually, we're not going to bother with this one. And, you know, it takes a lot of money to fight individual marginal seats. So parties, unless they've got multi-million-pound coffers, which really only Labour and the Tories do, the smaller parties have to make quite pragmatic decisions about where to concentrate their resources.
Indeed. Last one. This is from Terry, again on Labour. I'm predicting a hung parliament with reform possibly being the kingmaker. I'm not sure about the reform element, but do you think it could be a?
So I think hung parliament is not it's not by any means unlikely. As for reform being the kingmaker, that's really difficult for the reasons that we were just talking about under the first past the post system. It's really difficult for a very small new party with no MPs to actually suddenly get 50 MPs. You know,
yeah, sure.
What could happen though is that there's a hung parliament, and that ushers in proportional representation, which then longer term allows a party like Reform to have much more of a presence in Westminster.
That would be a massive game changer. TalkTV's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott, thank you so much for coming in.